You'd let me go for just one night, right? That was the first sentence. That exact sentence. No build-up. No warning. Just a glass of red wine in her hand, her legs crossed like she was on some damn Netflix drama, and those words casually slipping off her lips like she was asking to borrow my jacket. Just one night, she repeated, sipping, watching me, testing me. Her name's Brielle, and I used to think she was everything. Bright. Sharp. The kind of woman who walks into a room and doesn't just own it, she burns it down. We were married for 5 years. Laughed through storms, built dreams, even planned a second honeymoon. At least, I thought we were on the same team. Until that night. We were in our kitchen, marble counters, soft jazz playing from the Bluetooth speaker, the same track list we played during our engagement party. I had just gotten home from a brutal day, double shifts, back-to-back meetings, and Brielle knew it. She had that twisted timing down to an art. You mean like a hall pass? I asked, still stunned. No, she smirked. Not forever. Just one night. With someone who's been persistent. There was silence. Deafening. Even the damn ice in her glass stopped clinking. I remember blinking slowly, as if I could rewind time with my eyelids. Are you serious? I asked. She nodded like she was ordering sushi. He's been chasing me for months. Just once, and I'll come back. No feelings, no strings. I swear, I could hear the drywall behind me cracking from the pressure building in my chest. Her lover. His name was Chase, a smug, rich personal trainer who worked at her gym. I knew him. Met him twice. The second time, he hugged her a little too long. The kind of man who winked at his own reflection and probably had a mirror above his bed. The kind of man who doesn't ask permission. He takes. And what exactly do you get out of this? I asked her. A memory, she said. A night where I feel, desired again. Don't make it more than it is. She actually tried to pet my hand, like I was a puppy getting in the way of her big night out. That was the moment something inside me began to snap, but not loudly. It was silent, like ice cracking underfoot. Subtle. Dangerous. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I just watched her. Because part of me didn't believe this was real. But another part? It had seen this coming for weeks. Brielle had changed. Less eye contact. More perfume. Longer showers. Locked phones. That cold laugh when I made a joke. The signs were all there. I just chose not to read them. I told her no. Not out of pride. Out of dignity. And she laughed. She laughed in my face. Oh baby, come on. You think this is about you? She said, voice thick with mockery. You haven't touched me like you used to in months. You act like my body's a museum. No wonder someone else wants to explore it. That's when I felt the first real emotion, shame. Deep, volcanic shame. Not because I believed her, but because somewhere along the way, I let her become this. She stood up, grabbed her coat, and said, I'll be back in the morning. Maybe. And then she left. No tears. No guilt. Just heels clicking against our hardwood floors, leaving behind the scent of betrayal and designer perfume. I stood in that kitchen for another hour. My food had gone cold. The wine bottle lay uncorked. I stared at the door and remembered every promise we made in that very room. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I watched the sunrise and promised myself, if she walks back through that door, it won't be into the same man's arms. I waited. I waited like a fool. She came back at 6:43 in the morning. Not 6 o'clock. Not 7 o'clock. That awkward, too specific time that says, I wasn't planning to be noticed. She tried to sneak in, barefoot, heels in her hand, eyeliner smeared, hair messed up like she'd spent the night in a wind tunnel. She reeked of another man's cologne. Not mine. Something sharper. Cheaper. I sat on the couch. Lights off. Phone in hand, not recording, just watching her. She froze when she saw me, like a raccoon caught in a spotlight. Oh, she whispered, pretending to be surprised. Didn't think you'd be up. Didn't think I'd be up? After she told me she was going to go sleep with another man? Have fun. I asked, tone flat. My throat burned, but I swallowed the fire. She rolled her eyes. I don't want to fight, Ryan. Oh yeah, I'm Ryan. 32, full-time project manager, and now apparently the background character in my own marriage. And here she was, acting like I was the one being dramatic. I just want a shower, she added, trying to brush past me. Did he use protection? I asked quietly. She stopped. What? You heard me. I stood up. I'm 6'2", she's 5'5", but somehow she always made me feel small. Not today. That's disgusting, she snapped, as if I was the one who cheated. You're disgusting. She slapped me. Not hard. Not soft either. It was more of a wake-up call than an attack. Her hand trembled afterward, and she looked at me like I was the villain. I told you it was just one night. It meant nothing. You left our house to be with another man. You planned it. You asked for it. You made it real. I needed to feel alive, she hissed. You think I enjoy coming home to a man who can't even look at me without pity? I laughed. I actually laughed. You needed to feel alive, so you climbed into Chase's bed? He made me feel wanted. That was it. The sentence that took what little remained of my heart and shredded it. And now, I asked, do you feel powerful? Do you feel whole? I feel like you don't understand me. I took a deep breath, walked over to the kitchen, and picked up the envelope I'd prepared. The one with the screenshots. Her text with Chase. The hotel booking. Even the Uber receipt. She hadn't bothered to delete anything. That's how confident she was. Or how little she cared. She flipped through it slowly. Her face went blank. No guilt. Just annoyance. You went through my stuff? You handed me betrayal and expected me to stay quiet. She sat down on the couch, hands pressed against her temples. It was one night, Ryan. No, Brielle. It was a decision. And now it's mine. I went upstairs, packed a single bag, and came down 15 minutes later. She didn't try to stop me. Not once. You're seriously leaving? She asked, her voice dull now. I'm not your doormat. And Chase? What about him? You gonna go fight him or something? I turned and looked her straight in the eye. I don't need to fight a man who's already digging his own grave. But if he ever steps near me again, I won't hesitate. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something clever. Instead, she just watched me open the door. You're overreacting, she muttered. I'm underreacting, I replied. You haven't seen what I'd do if I really let myself feel this. Then I left. The morning air hit me hard. Cold. Fresh. Brutal. I walked to my car and didn't look back. But behind my calm, my hands were shaking. My stomach twisted. My chest felt caved in. Because no matter how much of a monster she'd become, she was still the woman I gave everything to. And now, everything was ashes. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. I drove for hours with no destination, just letting the road eat my thoughts 1 mile at a time. My phone buzzed a dozen times, calls, texts, most of them from Brielle. I didn't read a single one. I didn't want to see whatever half apology or emotional manipulation she was trying to cook up. At some point, I pulled over at a diner on Route 8, a place we used to stop at on road trips. Funny how betrayal poisons everything, even memories. I sat in a booth, ordered coffee, didn't drink it. The waitress asked if I was okay. I lied. Said I was just tired. What was I supposed to say? My wife asked for a hall pass, used it, and now I can't look at eggs the same way? I checked her social media. I told myself I wouldn't, but I did. She had posted a story, her face glowing, makeup still on, a caption that read, "Sometimes you have to choose yourself," with a damn heart emoji. She looked happy, genuinely happy, like she'd just been freed from a cage. I wondered if I'd been the cage all along. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later that evening, when I finally opened one of her texts. It read, "I don't want to lose you over one mistake. Can't we move past this? One mistake. Like forgetting milk at the store. Like missing a birthday dinner. Like accidentally falling into another man's bed." I didn't reply. I turned off the phone and checked into a cheap hotel 2 towns over. Showered. Sat on the bed. Stared at the TV without turning it on. I replayed everything, the smirk on her face when she asked for the night, the way she looked at me like I was already out of the picture. The cold, disgusting confidence she had. Like she knew I'd break. Like she was betting on it. I didn't cry. That part surprised me. Maybe I'd cried too much on the inside to have anything left. I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped me out and left a shell behind. Later that night, I got a call from Jason, my best friend since college. I hadn't told him anything, but somehow he knew. "You all right?" he asked. "No." "Want company?" "No." "You need anything?" Silence. "You want me to beat his ass?" That made me laugh. The first real laugh of the day. "Not yet." "You staying at a hotel?" "Yeah." "You planning to go back?" I didn't answer. "That's your answer," he said. He didn't push. That's why I trusted him. Around 2 a.m., I got another text. This one wasn't from Brielle. It was from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo of Brielle and Chase. At a club. She was sitting on his lap, laughing, drink in hand. His hand was on her thigh. The timestamp was tonight. Not last night. Tonight. She didn't just betray me once. She was still with him. My hands clenched around the phone so tight I thought I'd break it. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from rage. Raw, feral rage. The kind of anger that makes your jaw lock and your pulse thunder in your ears. She wasn't sorry. She never was. She played me. She mocked me. She wanted one night, and when I didn't burn the house down, she took it as a green light to keep going. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going back. Not for her. Not for closure. Not even for my stuff. I'd let her keep the house. Let her keep the memories. Let her rot in that shallow, plastic world she chose. But I wouldn't let her keep me. Not the version she thought she broke. Because that version of me? He died the moment she smiled and walked out the door. And now I was someone else. Someone she never expected. I didn't even tell her I was leaving. I just packed my things over the course of the next few days, quietly. No drama, no final confrontation, no closure. I left a note on the kitchen counter with the key to the house, simply saying, "I'm done. I'm leaving. Don't contact me." Then, I disappeared. It felt almost too easy. I got an apartment in the city, far enough from her gym, far enough from everything that reminded me of her. I didn't reach out to anyone. No family, no friends, no apologies, no explanations. I went through the motions. I worked. I ate. I slept. But most of all, I didn't think about her. At first, it was hard. There were moments when I thought I heard her voice calling my name. In the middle of a crowded street, I would catch a glimpse of someone with her hair color or her posture. But I didn't chase those ghosts. Every time I felt the ache of longing, I would remind myself of that text, of that night, of how easily she had discarded me. And then, one evening, 2 months after I left, I got a call. It was from Brielle. She didn't say anything at first. Just a long pause. Then, "I miss you." For a second, I thought about picking up. I thought about the years we spent together, the good times, the nights spent laughing until we fell asleep on the couch. But then I remembered her words, her face when she told me it was just one night. I remembered the smug look on her face when she asked for permission to betray me. "I don't miss you, Brielle," I said, my voice steady. "I don't miss anything about you. You've been gone from my life long before you left that night." She started to say something, but I cut her off. "You had every chance to fix this. You had every chance to choose us. And you chose him. So, don't call me again. Don't pretend like you regret what you did. You're not sorry. You're just lonely." She was silent for a moment. Then, "You're right." Her voice was so quiet, so hollow, that it almost felt like she was speaking from the other side of a wall. "I never wanted to lose you," she whispered. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. It was raining again. The kind of rain that makes the world look soft, quiet, almost surreal. "You didn't lose me," I said. "You let me go." I hung up before she could respond. That night, I went to the bar around the corner from my apartment. Nothing fancy. Just a place with old wooden tables and good whiskey. I sat at the bar, listening to the hum of voices, the clinking of glasses, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt nothing. No rage. No sadness. Just a strange peace. Because I had finally done it. I had walked away. Not for anyone else. Not for her. But for me. I knew that things would never be the same. My life, my future, my perspective on love, it had all changed. I wasn't going to rush into another relationship. I wasn't going to pick up the pieces of my life and pretend nothing had happened. But I also wasn't going to let this define me forever. The betrayal had taken a part of me, but it had also set me free. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most powerful thing she had given me. The chance to finally choose myself. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And that was the moment I knew I'd be okay. Months passed, and things started to settle. I focused on rebuilding myself in ways I hadn't even realized I needed to. The apartment I had rented became my sanctuary, a place where I could find peace, where I wasn't haunted by the image of Brielle's face, the memory of her lies, or the guilt that she had left me with. I threw myself into my work, but I also started to care for myself in ways I hadn't before. I went to the gym regularly, something I'd always neglected. I started picking up old hobbies, ones I'd forgotten about while I was trying to keep up with Brielle's ever-changing desires. I reconnected with old friends, people who had been pushed aside while I'd focused on her. And slowly, with each day that passed, I felt stronger. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. But no matter how much I tried to keep the past behind me, there were still moments when the memories of Brielle would creep in, like shadows at the edge of my mind. There were nights when I would wake up, her name lingering on the tip of my tongue, before I caught myself. There were moments when I found myself wondering what she was doing, who she was with, whether Chase was still around. And then, there was the night when it happened. I was sitting at the same bar I had been to on that rainy night, a few months before. I had gotten used to the routine, the quiet hum of the crowd, the low buzz of conversation, the comfort of the dim lighting. But tonight felt different. The air was heavier. My thoughts were more scattered. I hadn't heard from Brielle in weeks. I hadn't tried to reach out. But tonight, as I nursed my drink, I felt that tug. The one that told me she was somewhere nearby. And there she was. She walked in with one of her friends, laughing, her eyes catching mine before I could turn away. I didn't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. She was different. Her hair was longer, her makeup more dramatic, and she wore that same smug smile that had always made me want to break something. The same smile that told me she knew exactly what she was doing, that she was untouchable, that she had moved on. But I couldn't look away, and she didn't try to hide it. She knew I was watching her. She caught the eye of the bartender and made her way toward me. I didn't stand up. I didn't even flinch. I just waited, my glass in hand, and watched her approach with the same confidence that had once made me fall for her. "Ryan," she said, her voice too sweet. "Long time, no see." I didn't say anything at first. I just took another sip of my drink and let the silence settle between us. She looked different, but I still saw the same Brielle. The same woman who had destroyed everything we had, the one who had let another man into our lives without a second thought. She was still that woman, dressed in the same disrespect and arrogance. "You look, well," she added after a moment, as if she was trying to find the right words. "I'm fine," I said, my voice steady, indifferent. "I'm better than I was." Her face faltered for just a second, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She sat down next to me without asking, as if it were still her place, her right. "I've been thinking about you," she said, her fingers tapping on the bar. "About us." I almost laughed. How classic. She'd been thinking about me. How sweet. How convenient. But I didn't laugh. I just stared at her. "Really?" I said, my voice quieter now. "Funny how you never thought about me when you were with him." Her smile faded slightly, and she shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she didn't back down. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, the same way she used to when she was trying to convince me of something, trying to get me to listen to her excuses. "I made a mistake," she said. "I know that. And I regret it. But you don't have to keep punishing me. I'm not that person anymore." Her words hung in the air like a bad perfume. "You regret it?" I repeated slowly. "You regret being with him?" She nodded. "Yes, it was. I don't know. Stupid. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just lost." "You weren't lost, Brielle," I said, my voice growing louder. "You were selfish. You wanted what you couldn't have, and you took it. And when you were done, you tossed me aside like I was nothing. You weren't lost. You were reckless." She flinched, but then, as if on cue, she smiled again. That smile. The one that made me want to walk out, to turn my back on everything I had once believed about her. "I've changed, Ryan," she said softly. "I'm sorry. I want to fix things." I stared at her for a long moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. She wasn't sorry. She was just trying to fix what was broken, her image, her guilt. Not me. Not us. "I'm done," I said, my voice finally cold. "You don't get to fix me. You don't get to fix us. You broke it, and it's gone." She didn't say anything else. She just looked at me, that smile fading into something else. Something darker, more defeated. And in that moment, I knew that I was finally free. Not because she apologized, not because she regretted what she'd done, but because I had walked away long before she could come back. Because I had let go when I needed to. Because I had learned the hardest lesson of all. I was enough, even without her. And that was all I needed to know. I left the bar that night without looking back. It felt like the last piece of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. Brielle, in all her arrogance and calculated apologies, didn't even understand what she had done. She couldn't grasp the gravity of the damage she'd caused, not just to our relationship, but to everything I thought I knew about love and trust. The months that followed were a blur of quiet healing. I focused more on myself than I ever had before. I took longer walks in the evenings, finding solace in the routine, the stillness. I visited the places I'd avoided for so long, old parks, quiet cafes, places that once held memories of Brielle and me. But now, those memories didn't sting. They were just memories. And I was finally learning to let go. I went to therapy. I didn't think I needed it, but I quickly realized how much baggage I was carrying. The sessions weren't about Brielle, they were about me, about understanding why I had allowed myself to be so consumed by someone else's needs, and why I had been willing to disregard my own worth just to make her happy. I learned that, in the end, I had been just as lost as she had been. I had lost myself in the process of loving her. It wasn't easy. There were days when I still heard her voice, when I still imagined her smile, and I would wonder, just for a second, if I had done the right thing. But every time I felt that doubt creeping in, I reminded myself of everything she had taken from me. I reminded myself that she didn't just cheat on me, she erased the version of me that had trusted her completely. She made me question everything I knew about loyalty, about fidelity, and, worst of all, about myself. I didn't reach out to her again. There were no more apologies, no more late-night texts or empty promises. I kept moving forward. I met new people, made new friends. I didn't rush into anything, but I started to open myself up to the possibility of real connection again. But this time, I wasn't looking to fill a void. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me. I was looking for someone who would see me as I was, whole, not broken. A year passed before I finally ran into Brielle again. It was at a mutual friends gathering, one of those awkward, forced situations where you're expected to smile and pretend everything is normal. Brielle was there, of course, acting like nothing had ever happened, like the past year hadn't been filled with lies and betrayal. She was with some guy, probably someone new, but who could even tell anymore? The smile on her face was as practiced as always, but there was something in her eyes. A flicker of something, regret, maybe, that I couldn't quite read. She looked at me across the room, and for a split second, I thought about what I would say if I had the chance to speak to her. Maybe I would finally get that closure, finally lay everything out. But then I realized something. I didn't need to say anything. I didn't need to apologize or explain myself. I didn't need to get back the closure that I had been chasing for so long. I had already let go. I had already moved on. The moment I decided to walk away from her was the moment I stopped needing anything from her. And in that moment, I realized I had forgiven her. Not for her, but for me. Because holding on to that anger, that bitterness, it was only poisoning me. And I wasn't going to let her do that anymore. I smiled, but I didn't approach her. I simply turned and walked in the opposite direction, away from the woman who had once been my everything. As I stepped into the night air, the weight that had been sitting on my chest for so long was gone. I had freed myself. The man I had been with Brielle, he was gone, and in his place stood someone stronger, someone who had learned to value himself, someone who no longer needed validation from anyone. And that was the moment I knew for sure. I was finally at peace. The days that followed that encounter with Brielle were filled with a quiet satisfaction I hadn't known in a long time. It wasn't a celebratory feeling, but a steady, grounded peace that settled deep within me. I no longer felt the need to chase after answers, to wonder if I'd made the right choice, or if she would ever regret what she had done. I had made peace with the past, not because I was over it, but because I understood it. I understood that people change, and sometimes that change is for the worse. Brielle had become someone I no longer recognized, and the woman I had loved was someone I would never get back. And that was okay. In the months after, I dedicated more time to things that actually mattered to me. I focused on the people who had stood by me, the friends who had supported me through the mess. I reconnected with my family, rebuilt relationships that had faded into the background when I had been wrapped up in the chaos of my marriage. I found that I had more room for people in my life, more space for laughter, for honesty, for things that truly made me feel alive. I started dating again, but it was different this time. I didn't rush. I didn't seek out someone to fill the void that Brielle had left. Instead, I allowed myself to get to know people, to understand what I truly wanted in a partner. It wasn't about rushing into another relationship. It was about taking my time to find someone who would add to my life, not complete it. I also took up new hobbies. I signed up for a painting class, something I'd always been curious about but never had the time for. I found that it gave me a sense of peace, a way to express what I'd been feeling, what I had struggled to put into words. I painted landscapes at first, distant hills, rolling fields, endless skies. They were simple, calm images, much like the life I was beginning to build for myself. But even with all the progress, there were still days when the memories crept back in. I would find myself thinking about Brielle, not with anger, but with a quiet reflection. I would wonder if she was happy, if Chase was still in the picture, if she ever thought about the life we once shared. But those thoughts never lasted long. I had learned to accept that some questions didn't need answers. Some people didn't need closure. Sometimes, moving forward meant leaving the past where it belonged, behind me. And then, one evening, I received a letter. It was from Brielle. I hadn't expected it. The envelope was thick, almost like a journal. My heart didn't race. It didn't skip a beat. I wasn't excited, nor was I filled with dread. It was simply a letter, one more piece of the past. I opened it slowly, almost cautiously, and started reading. Ryan, it began, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know what I'm asking for. But I need to say this. As I read, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. Not anger. Not sorrow. Just a quiet, detached curiosity. She told me about her struggles after I left, how she had tried to fill the emptiness with people who didn't matter, with things that didn't last. She spoke of Chase, of how things had faded between them, and how she now realized that she had hurt more people than she had ever known. She admitted to her mistakes, to the lies she had told, to the way she had neglected me when I had given everything. It wasn't an apology in the traditional sense, but it was honest. It was raw. And for a moment, I was tempted to feel sympathy. But I stopped myself. The letter ended with a simple line. I hope you find what you're looking for, and that you can forgive me in time. I put the letter down, staring at the words for a long moment. I realized that this was the final piece of closure I didn't even know I needed. I had been seeking peace, seeking a resolution, seeking something that would heal the wound she had left behind. But in the end, the only person who could give me that peace was me. I folded the letter, placed it in the drawer where I kept the rest of the past, and went on with my evening. No more holding on to bitterness, no more looking back at what could have been. In a way, that letter was a gift. It wasn't an apology I had been hoping for. It was a sign that Brielle, too, was trying to move on. And that's all I had ever wanted for both of us. I realized, in that moment, that healing doesn't always come in grand gestures or dramatic moments of reconciliation. Sometimes, it comes in the quiet acceptance of the things that can't be changed. And with that realization, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. Because I knew, now more than ever, that my life was my own. And no one, could take that away from me again. As time went on, I began to understand the true meaning of freedom. It wasn't about leaving Brielle behind or finding closure in her letter. It was about reclaiming control over my own life. It was about learning that I didn't need anyone else's validation to be happy, to feel worthy, or to feel whole. I spent more time on myself, doing the things I loved, and making new memories with people who truly cared about me. I found peace in the simplicity of everyday life, taking walks in the park, getting lost in a good book, or simply sitting in silence, feeling the weight of the past slowly fading away. And when the opportunity for love came again, it didn't feel like a desperate attempt to fix something broken. It felt natural, effortless, as if I had simply allowed myself to grow into a better version of who I was meant to be. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me. I was looking for someone who would be an equal, someone who would respect me, someone who would choose me, not out of obligation, but because they truly saw me for who I was. But more than anything, I had learned to appreciate my own company, to cherish my own worth. I didn't need the approval or the love of someone who had been willing to throw it all away. Brielle may have walked away, but she didn't take everything with her. What she left behind was a man who learned to stand on his own, a man who no longer feared the pain of the past, and a man who could finally say with conviction, I'm enough. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. It took me a long time to get here. But now, as I stood at the edge of this new chapter, I knew that I had finally found my peace. The story was over. And my life, my new life, had only just begun.